Speaker. All right. Hey, everybody. Let's get started. Good to see everyone. We will not be doing tomorrow night. So we were just tonight doing the book. And we'll see how far we get tonight. Where were we? Tuesday, finished 13th. There we go. The 20th. We did that. Yep. And 24. Start 21. We did that. Good thing we marked these things. There we go. So we're talking about the seven fears, right? Under the six fears may be listed lesser fears. The six basic or major fears here enumerated are the sources from which they have believed to have grown are described: the fear of poverty, the fear of old age, the fear of criticism, the fear of loss of love of someone, the fear of ill health, the fear of death. So we are on the fear of old age. The fear of old age. In the main, this fear grows out of two sources. First, the thought that old age may bring with it poverty. Secondly, and by far the most common source of origin, from false and cruel sectarian teachings, which have been so well mixed with fire and brimstone and with purgatories and other bogies that human beings have learned to fear old age because it meant the approach of another and possibly a much more horrible world than this one, which is known to be bad enough. In the basic fear of old age, man has two very sound reasons for his apprehension. The one growing out of distrust of fellow human, of his fellow man who may seize whatever worldly goods he may possess, and the other arising from the terrible pictures of the world to come, which were deeply planted in his mind through the law of social heredity, long before he came into the possession of that mind. Is it any wonder that man fears the approach of old age? Questions, comments on old age fear? The fear of criticism, addiction to approval. Go ahead, yes.
Can I say something about old age?
Sure.
I don't necessarily think it's just the fear of a transition to another world, but also the physical maladies that sometimes, that more often than not, come with old age.
So 1926, average lifespan versus now through medical technology, totally agree. So that's probably why it wasn't such as big a thing. All right, you worked, didn't have retirement, didn't have people who spend more time surfing social media than they did working. There's a lot more physical labor then. So I totally get it, totally agree. I think that should be amended. I think it should say that we've been able to give people the ability to live longer, just not a longer living they'd like.
Right, quality.
Yep. 100% agree.
Thanks for indulging me.
You bet. Thanks for bringing it up. The fear of criticism. Just how man acquired this basic fear, it would be hard, if not impossible, definitely to determine. But one thing is certain. Man, I wish I got paid for the commas in that sentence. Just how man acquired the basic fear, it would be hard, comma, there's $10. If not possible, another $10. Definitely to determine, there's another $10. But one thing is certain, another $10. He has it in well-developed form, the fear of criticism. Some believe that this fear has made its appearance in the mind of man about the time that politics came into existence. Others believe its source can be traced to no further than the first meeting of an organization of females known as the Women's Club. Go ahead. Go ahead. Let's hear your comments now. You're lucky I let you speak in the last sentence. The Women's Club, still another school, thank you, of humorists, charges the origin of the contents of the Holy Bible, whose pages abound with the very vitriolic and violent forms of criticism. If the latter claim is correct, and those who believe literally all they find in the Bible are not mistaken, then God is responsible for man's inherent fear of criticism, because God caused the Bible to be written. Let the scholars go wild. The author, being neither a humorist nor a prophet, just an ordinary workaday type of person. I can't wait to work that into a sentence. Workaday. My workaday type of person is inclined to attribute the basic fear of criticism to that part of man's inherited nature which prompts him not only to take away his fellow man's goods and wares, but to justify his action by criticism of his fellow man's character. The fear of criticism takes on many different forms, the majority of which are petty and trivial in nature, even to the extent of being childish in the extreme. Bald-headed men, for example, are bald for no other reason than their fear of criticism. Heads become bald because of the protection of hats and tight-fitting bands which cut off the circulation at the roots of the hair. Men wear hats not because they actually need them for the sake of comfort, but mainly because everybody's doing it. And the individual falls in line and does it also lest some other individual criticize him. Addiction to approval. Women seldom have bald heads or even thin hair because they wear hats that are loose, the only purpose of which is to make an appearance. But it must not be imagined that women are free from their fear of criticism associated with hats. If any woman claims to be superior to man with reference to this fear, ask her to walk down the street wearing a hat that is 1 or 2 seasons out of style. The makers of all manners of clothing have not been slow to capitalize this basic fear of criticism, with which all mankind is cursed. Every season, it'll be observed the styles in many articles of wearing apparel change. Who establishes the style? Certainly not the purchaser of clothes, but the manufacturer of clothes. Why does he change the style so often? Obviously, this change is made so that the manufacturer can sell more clothes. For the same reason, the manufacturers of automobiles, with a few rare and very sensible exceptions, change styles every season. The manufacturing of clothing knows how the man animal fears to wear a garment which is 1 season out of step, that which they are all wearing now. 1 season out of step with that which they are all wearing now. Is it not true? Does not your own experience back it up? We have been describing the manner in which people behave under the influence of the fear of criticism as applied to the small and petty things in life. Let us now examine human behavior under the fear when it affects people in connection with the more important matters connected with human intercourse. Take, for example, particularly any person who has reached the age of mental maturity from 35 to 45 years of age as a general average. Okay, good. I'll tell that to Mason. And if you could read his or her mind, you would find that a very decided disbelief of and a rebellion against most of the fables taught by the majority of the religionists. Powerful and mighty is the fear of criticism. That time was, and not so very long ago, when the word infidel meant ruin to whomsoever it was applied. It is seen, therefore, that man's fear of criticism is not without ample cause for its existence. The fourth basic fear of that, anybody on fear of criticism? Okay. The fourth fear, where are we at here? The fourth basic fear is that of fear of loss of love of someone. This source from which this fear originated needs but little description. For it is obvious that it grew out of man's nature to steal his fellow man's mate, or at least to take liberties with her, unknown to her rightful lord and master. Write it down, circle it. It says it right there in the book. It must be true. Let me show this to Michelle. Better yet, why don't you all show this to Michelle and I'll be packing up. By nature, all men are polygamists. The statement of truth, which will, of course, bring denials from those who are either too old to function in a normal way sexually, or have, from some other cause, lost the contents of certain glands, which are responsible for man's tendency toward the plurality of the opposite sex. AKA where the phrase came from, grow a pair, man. There can be little doubt that jealousy and all other forms of more or less mild dementia, pericox, insanity, grew out of man's inherited fear of the loss of the love of someone. Of all of the sane fools studied by this author, that represented by a man who had become jealous of some woman, or that of a woman who had become jealous of some man, in the oddest and strangest, the author fortunately never had but one case of personal experience of this form of insanity. But from that experience, he learned enough to justify him in stating that the fear of the loss of love of someone is one of the most painful, if not in fact the most painful, and all of the six basic fears. And it seems reasonable to add that this fear plays more havoc with the human mind than do any of the other six basic fears, often leading to the more violent forms of permanent insanity. The fifth basic fear is that of the fear of ill health. This fear has its origin to considerable extent also in the same sources from which the previous fears of poverty and old age are derived. The fear of ill health must needs be closely associated with both poverty and old age, because it also leads toward the borderline of the terrible words of which man knows not, but which he has heard some discomforting stories. The author strongly suspects that those engaged in the business of selling good health methods have had considerable to do with keeping the fear of ill health alive in the human mind. We talk about the war on drugs. We have more drugs now than we've ever had. We talk about the fight on obesity, and we've got more people fatter than ever. Just saying, the author strongly suspects that those engaged in the business of selling good health methods have had a considerable to do with keeping the fear of ill health alive in the human mind. For longer than the record of human race can be relied on, the whole world has known of various and sundry forms of therapy and health purveyors. If a man gains his living from keeping people in good health, it seems but natural that he would use every means at his command to persuading people that they needed his services. Thus, in time, it might be that people would inherit the fear of ill health. The sixth and last of the 6 basic fears is that of the fear of death. To many, this is the worst of all 6 basic fears. And for this reason, why it is so regarded becomes, and the reason why it is so regarded becomes obvious, and even to the casual. To many, this is the worst of all the 6 basic fears, and the reason why it is so regarded becomes obvious to even the casual student of psychology. The so-called heathen are not much afraid of death, as are the civilized, especially that proportion of the civilized population which has come under the influence of theology. See how he said it nicely there in that religion? For hundreds of millions of years, man has been asking the still unanswered, and it may be unanswerable question, whence and whither? Where did I come from, and where am I going after death? The more cunning and crafty, as well as the honest but credulous of the race, have not been slow to offer the answer to these questions. In fact, the answering of these questions has become one of the so-called learned professions, despite the fact that but little learning is required to enter this profession. Did he just smack down the preachers and the... Who's the one with the eyeliner? Tammy Faye Baker. I knew it'd come to me. Witness now the major source of origin of the fear of death. Come into my tent, embrace my faith, accept my dogmas, and pay my salary, and I will give you a ticket that will admit you to the straightaway into heaven, that will admit you straight away into heaven when you die, says the leader of one form of sectarianism. Remain out of my tent, says the same leader, and you will go direct to hell, where you will burn throughout eternity. While in fad, the self-appointed leader may not be able to provide safe conduct into heaven, nor, by the lack of supervision, allow the unfortunate seeker after truth to descend into hell, the possibility of the latter seems so terrible that it lays hold of the mind and creates the fear of fears, the fear of death. In truth, no man knows, and no man has ever known what heaven or hell is like, or if such places exist. And the very lack of definite knowledge opens the door of what's that say? Lagarde. It's all one word. Legardemain. Is it all one word? I don't know if that's one word. And various brands of trickery, deceit, and fraud. The truth is nothing less and nothing more, that no man knows, nor has any man ever known where we come from at birth or where we go at death. Any person claiming otherwise is either deceiving himself or is a conscious imposter to make it a business to live without rendering service of value. Through play on the credulity, I know what the word sounds like. Credulity? How do you say that word? Of humanity. Well, look it up. I'll go in for extra class. I'll go in for extra help afterwards. Be it said that their belief, credulity. Yeah, I knew I'd get it. Be it said that their belief, however, the majority of those who engaged in selling tickets to heaven actually believe not only that they know where heaven exists, but that their creeds and formulas will give safe passage to all who embrace them. This belief is summed up in one word, credulity, that word. It is hardly sufficient to state that social heredity is the method through which man gathers all knowledge that reaches him through the 5 senses. It is more to the point to state how social heredity works in as many different applications as we will give the student of comprehensive understanding of that law. In as many different applications as will give the student a comprehensive understanding of that law. Let us begin with some of the lower forms of animal life and examine the manner in which they are affected by the law of social heredity. Shortly after this, author began to examine the major sources from which men gather the knowledge which makes them what they are. Some 30-odd years ago, he discovered the nest of the ruffed grouse. The nest was so located that the mother bird could be seen from a considerable distance when she was on the nest. With the aid of a pair of field glasses, the bird was closely watched until the young birds were hatched out. It happened on a regular daily observation. It happened that the regular daily observation was made but a few hours after the young birds came out of the shell. Desiring to know what would happen, the author approached the nest. The mother bird remained nearby until the intruder was within 10 or 12 feet of her. Then she disarranged her feathers, stretched one wing over her leg, and went hobbling away, making the pretense of being crippled. But being somewhat familiar with the tricks of the mother bird, the author did not follow, but instead went to the nest to take a look at the little ones. Without the slightest signs of fear, they turned their heads toward him, moving their heads first one way and then another. He reached down and picked up one of them. With no signs of fear, it stood in the palm of his hand. He laid the bird back down in the nest and went away to a safe distance to give the mother bird a chance to return. The wait was short. This is cool. Very soon she began cautiously to edge her way back toward the nest until she was within a few feet, when she spread her wings and ran as fast as she could, uttering, meanwhile, a series of sounds similar to those of a hen when she has found some morsel of food and wishes to call her brood to partake of it. She gathered the little birds around her, continued to quiver in a highly excited manner, shaking her wings and ruffling her feathers. One could almost hear the words as she gave the little birds their first lesson in self-defense through the law of social heredity. You silly creatures, don't you know that men are your enemies? Shame on you for allowing that man to pick you up in his hands. It's a wonder he didn't carry you off and eat you alive. The next time you see a man approaching, make yourselves scarce. Lie down on the ground, run under the leaves, go anywhere to get out of sight, and remain out of sight until the enemy is well on his way. Unquote. The little birds stood around and listened to the lecture with intense interest. After the mother bird had quieted down and the author again started to approach the nest within 20 feet or so of the guarded household, the mother bird again started to lead him in one direction by crumpling up her wing and hobbling along as if she were crippled. He looked down at the nest, but the glance was in vain. The little birds were nowhere to be found. They had learned rapidly to avoid the natural enemy thanks to their natural instinct. Again, the author retreated and awaited until the mother bird had reassembled her household, came to visit them, but with the similar results. When he approached the spot where he last saw the mother bird, with not the slightest signs of the little fellows to be found. Questions, comments, thoughts?
It reminds you of the law of survival.
Yep. Amazing what we can do, right? And how fast they learn. There's no telling. She might have said those exact words in bird language, which would be kind of cool. When a small boy, the author captured a young crow. When a small boy, the author captured a young crow and made a pet of it. The bird became quite well satisfied with its domestic surroundings and learned to perform many tricks requiring considerable intelligence. After the bird was big enough to fly, it was permitted to go wherever it pleased. Sometimes it would be gone for many hours, but it always returned home before dark. One day, some wild crows became involved in a fight with an owl in the field near our house where the pet crow lived. As soon as the pet heard the caw of the wild relatives, it flew to the top of the house and, with signs of great agitation, walked from one end of the house to the other. Finally, it took wing and flew in the direction of the battle. The author followed to see what would happen. In a few minutes, he came up with the pet. It was sitting on the lower branches of the tree, and the two wild crows were sitting on a limb just above, chattering and walking back and forth, acting very much in the same fashion that angry parents behave towards their offspring when chastising them. The author approached the two wild crows flew away, one of them circling around the tree a few times, meanwhile letting out a terrible flow of the most abusive language, which no doubt was directed at the foolish relative who hadn't had enough sense to fly away when flying was good. The pet was called, but paid no attention. That evening he returned home, but would not come near the house. He sat high in the limb in the apple tree and talked in crow language for about 10 minutes, saying no doubt that he decided to go back to the wild life of its fellows, then flew away and did not return until 2 days later. When it came back, it did some more talking in crow language, keeping at a safe distance. Meanwhile, it then went away and never returned. Social heredity had robbed the author of a fine pet. The only consolation he got for the loss of the crow was that it had shown fine sportsmanship by coming back and giving notice of its intentions to depart. Many farmhands had left the farm without going to the trouble of this formality. It is well known fact that the fox will prey upon all manner of fowl and small animals, with the exception of the skunk. No reason need to be stated of why Mr. Skunk enjoys immunity. A fox may tackle a skunk once, but never twice. For this reason, a skunk hide, when nailed to a chicken roost, will keep away all but the very young and inexperienced foxes, at a safe distance. The odor of a skunk, once experienced, is never to be forgotten. No other smell is even remotely resembles it. It is nowhere recorded that any mother fox ever taught her young how to detect and keep away from the familiar smell of a skunk. But all who are informed on fox lore know that foxes and skunks never seek lodgment in the same cave. But one lesson is sufficient to teach a fox all it cares to know about skunks. Through the law of social heredity, operating via the sense of smell, one lesson serves for an entire lifetime. Questions, comments, thoughts? We're going to end there.
That's so true. That skunk smell.
Well, isn't it?
Our tent got skunked when we were down in Rhode Island camping one year. The only Canadians, right?
Wow.
And we tried everything to get it out. Javix, tomato juice, the whole gamut of stuff, and we could never get the smell out. And it's only a little skunk.
And it's funny when you see a skunk in the highway and you know you're getting close, you can almost smell it before you even get there.
True, true.
Very cool. Who else? Thoughts, comments, questions, takeaways? How do you use this in your business? If you know what the 6 basic fears of man and woman, of humanity are, isn't your goal as a side gig hustler, isn't your goal to help them put to rest, to calm, to make less those fears? But we talk about income, and we talk about how great the products are and the flagship ingredient, and how good my mentor is, and how great my company is, and how wonderful the president is. And none of that stuff matters. It's proven every day when people quit. It's proven every day when people don't want to take care of their health. They don't care about the product. Hell, they barely care about themselves. So it's about identity. It's about understanding human nature. It's about asking the tough questions. It's about having permission to ask tough questions. Many of us never get permission to ask tough questions, and we go off and ask tough questions. Get him, Beamish. Questions, comments, thoughts? Okay.
So I have a question.
Okay.
You said just a little bit ago, people don't care about their health. They don't care about themselves. If that's the case, what do they care about? Do they just not care about anything?
Well, they were told not to care about themselves, and they were taught that. So therefore, they follow protocol. They're good students. Right? You know, the 90-second exercise, right? I take somebody you love and have you do something wildly unbelievable, thought to be impossible in 2 weeks, and you could get it done. It proves we will do things for other people. It's why a granddaughter can grab a grandfather's ankle and say, or grab his calf and go, Papa, please don't die. And he stops smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day like that, cold turkey. We have to find people's why not. We have to find their DMP. We have to literally build their DMP for them. That's what the 21 reasons in 5 minutes. How many of you have used that exercise for yourself? It's been a while. I promise you. I'll bet you paychecks. It's been a while. Set 5 minutes, and what are the 21 things you want out of your business? And then do what you do to play them off each other. You 1 or 2. I want them both. 1 or 2. And you get down to the one thing, and usually it's between 8 and 13. 5. What's the 21 reasons, 21 things you want from X, from your business, from your relationship, from your trip, from your side gig, from your spouse? What are the 21 things you want in 5 minutes? Go. And set a timer, and you'll be surprised. And you've known this, and you're working on this stuff, and it'd probably be the 4th or 5th time you've done the exercise. What are the chances your prospect or your client has never even heard of this, has never even written down, taken an hour to write down 21 reasons? We just assume way too much. And these are tools that we have, much like gratitude. You want to really make it significant, write down 101 things in 21 minutes. That's the goal. That was the original one from Mark Victor Hansen. 101 reasons in 21 minutes. Versus 21 things. I came up with 21 things in 5 minutes. Because what it does is it creates the new neural pathways. What it's really doing is neuroencoding. It's breaking neuroencoding patterning. Most people can't get to 21. If they do, they're real cheesy things. Car, house, vacation, right? They don't have to be long paragraphs, but they have to have a little bit of detail. So there you go. And so that's why people don't take care of themselves, because they don't work on themselves. Hardest work they'll ever do is the work you do on yourself. How many of you read 10 pages of a good book every night before you go to bed? Cool. Do you know what tell me about what the last 10 pages said? Come on, you read them. You checked the box. Now tell me the story. What were the 10 pages about? What was the name of the book? First of all, do you know the name of the book?
Fast Like a Girl.
Okay. And what were the 10 pages about?
It was about how fasting resets can help to reset mitochondria strength.
Cool. So
That section was very sciencey.
Cool. Make it non-sciencey for me and give me a leadership story on it.
Oh. I am not sure that I can, Sean.
Okay. So you're a wellness, make believe you're somebody who wants to be a client of yours. I'll be you, and give me a condition that has nothing to do with whatever that. Tell me what the condition is that would be something totally different than cell mitochondria.
I am tired all the time. I have no energy.
You know, I was reading a book the other night, and it's about fasting. And the last thing you probably want to do is fast right now, right? You think that if I don't eat something, I'm just going to be exhausted. And sometimes you're even too tired to eat. Well, inside the cell is something called mitochondria. This is the factory that makes each cell perform. And the funny thing is that in order to get the mitochondria jump started, science shows that sometimes we've got to take away all the trash that's been going into the cell. So I'm not going to say we're going to go put you on a 7-day fast, because you'd run out of this place screaming. Leadership is much like fasting. We got to figure out what's the one thing we're going to do. When you're on a fast, what's the one thing you're allowed? Without any question at all. What's the one thing you're allowed?
Water.
Water. Leadership is the same way. When you finally decide you're going to follow a level of leadership, you have to fast from everything else, because everything seems like it's not going to be significant. Well, but if I had an apple, it's not going to, the sugar in an apple will shut your system down, and you think I'm doing good. It's an organic apple. I picked it off a tree, one of my own trees. I didn't spray it. I didn't do nothing. But it'll reset your fasting, and you'll have to start all over. Leadership is the same way. Man, I'm all in on this person, and she's got me going. I'm loving her. Ooh, did you hear what he said? You're done. It's wiped out. You're over, finished, kaput. You're not getting anywhere. You're losing traction. Well, first of all, you never had traction, so you can't be distracted. And that's the way leadership is. And that's the way the cell mitochondria is. You've got to give it its space for 72 hours. It does amazing things. 96 hours, you'll be amazed at what it could do. The challenge is to tell somebody you're not going to eat for 96 hours. They think they're going to die. Something like that. I don't know.
That was pretty good.
And if I only knew what I was talking about. I know a little bit about mitochondria, but there's so much. There's the amount of activity that goes on in a cell. You can use this. This is science. Is the equivalent of an aircraft carrier with 5,000 military folk on it in full operation, preparing to go to war. That's just one cell. So if you've got that much energy in you and you're tired, there is a disconnect.
How do you do this? How do you do that? What you just did?
It's storytelling.
What plug? What plug are you connected to?
Human in storytelling.
Practice.
And the key is, I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. I said, and practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes progress. They said, but perfect practice makes perfect. And now I remember where I was saying it. My haircut was finishing, and there was 6 other people in the room waiting, and I was already waiting for 45 minutes. There's no way you can perfectly practice if practice makes progress. But that would have been another 2-hour story. So
Yeah,
sometimes we just pick our battles. So, what'd you learn? What'd you like?
Oh, I learned that it doesn't matter what topic is thrown to you, you're going to be able to swing a bat and hit a home run.
Well, good. Thanks for noticing. Yeah, I got that down pretty good.
Yeah, you do. And I appreciate so much the reminder to do the 21 things in 5 minutes, or even the 101 things in 21 minutes, because it's been a while since I've done that. And I need some reconnection.
So do you ever play pool?
Oh, it's been a long time.
Right. How often did you chalk your stick?
Oh, maybe every other shot.
How often do the pros chalk their stick?
Probably every time.
So doing the 21 in 5 minutes is chalking your stick. Until you can blow it out of the water, then do 31 in 25 minutes. The key is to create the neural networks. And because you sharpen your stick or chalk your stick and do that exercise, you activate your reticular activating system.
Yeah, I think mine has some dust on it.
Well, it's maybe go get some tinfoil and put it on the rabbit ears.
I was actually thinking about this today, that yes, I do brush my teeth with my non-dominant hand. I do things, walk backwards. I purposefully do things differently so that I'm not getting into that rut. But when it comes to, okay, so I'm going to say that's on the personal side, but when it comes to the business side, I'm doing the same thing and I'm getting the same results, and it's
How many
not
thank you
working.
messages did you send out to your clients today?
Well, I didn't send any out today, but I sent 5 yesterday.
Today's a good day to do that.
Yes, it is. And I'm sending them it's snail mail. I bought a bunch of thank you cards, and that's what I'm doing.
And is there a way for them to, what you might think about is running it through a printer with a QR code with your latest updates. Still handwrite it.
Oh, isn't
run the printer,
that clever?
Run the printer through with a QR code that goes to your website or whatever new info you got.
I'll have to figure that out, but that's worth figuring out.
Usually it's like printing a label. You go in and you can do the whoever does the labels. I wanted to say Avis, but it's not, Avery, right? And you say Avery postcard or greeting card, and it gives you the size, and then it'll pop up the template, and you drop the QR code. You go into Canva, make the QR code, and you drop in the URL in Canva. It says what do you want the QR code to represent, and you drop in the URL that you want it to go to, and then it'll create the QR code, print it off as a PDF and do the background clear, transparent background when you download it. And now it's a image in your computer, and you drop it in the card and print it, and there's the QR code that takes you to the website.
Very clever. Thank you.
You're welcome. Just full of it. All right, everybody. I love you tons. I appreciate it. I'm your head brain training QR code printing misfit. I'll see you all where?
At the next
At the next event.
At the next event. The
All right,
next
everybody.
event.
See you tomorrow morning. Thanks, everybody.